What surprised me about executive coaching? That's why coaching is a journey. I use the word the journey of executive coaching because it's a journey as a coach. That's what CMC does, right? Every day, CMC is working to help coaches figure out and evolve their philosophy and their own leadership of their own self. And so leadership was a really powerful part of my journey early on because of this mentor. And I learned how to work with my team. I learned how to work with peers in the organization. I learned how to work with organizations, parts of the organization that were not under my direct leadership officially. I learned how to influence those people. I learned how to work with my leadership and how to manage up, so to speak, and how to lead them and how to help them achieve their goals, but also how to help me navigate that tension between, the people above you and the people below you in your leadership chain. Hey, it's Daniel, and you are about to watch a clip from our free podcast, The Coach's Journey, where we help you navigate the surprisingly difficult path of building a coaching business by people who are actually doing it. And we go live, raw and unedited every week in our free Facebook community. Coaches Nation, welcome to another edition of the Coach's Journey podcast. I'm Daniel Fernandez, and today's topic is the journey of executive coaching. And if you're a coach who is interested in executives or corporate or leadership, today is going to be a really powerful podcast for you. And even if you're not, even if you're early in your stage of coaching or haven't decided on these, there's still some really valuable things that we're going to talk about today in this podcast. So I'm going to start out with what surprised me about executive coaching. And one of the things that surprised me about executive coaching is the thing that surprises me about a lot of things, which is it's less about what you think it's about, which is like status or performance or optimization. It is a little bit about those things, but it's more about helping humans navigate the complexity, the relationships, leadership under pressure in complex environments even. And so that kind of makes me think back to what surprises me about coaching itself. And it's there's two things. There's the business is hard and the coaching is hard. And it sounds like business would be easy, but it's actually pretty hard. It's just as hard as the coaching side. And coaching is hard because it's so much more nuanced and emotionally challenging than I initially thought at the beginning of my coaching journey. So that's why coaching is a journey. I use the word the journey of executive coaching because it's a journey as a coach. And to do executive coaching, there's a journey there too. And so something that does surprise me about executives is that it doesn't matter how high up in a company you are. If you're an executive, every executive struggles with the same human challenges that everyone does. It's like, how do I have these hard conversations that are high stakes or that maybe aren't high stakes but feel hard to me? How do I make decisions in a complex environment? How do I influence the people around me? How do I help those around me, especially my team? How do I help my team? How do I help them be better? How do I help them understand what I'm trying to do? How do I help them prioritize? All the stuff. There's so many things going on in a company, and in any team, for any executive, even if they don't have teams, they have people that they're influencing. There's a lot of things that it's the same struggles as every human has. It's just a different context, right? We all struggle with those emotional challenges of how do I deal with what's happening in front of me? And so at the end of the day, just like most high level coaching, executive coaching is actually not at all really about accountability. It's about helping people think clearly through the complexity, through the situations, the environments, the difficult situations they're in. And they need help, processing through all those things that they're facing, including the human dynamics within the organizations. And what you can do with executive coaching is help people think through those dynamics and build the confidence that they need in tackling the challenges in front of them, making better decisions or having conversations. That's a big one sometimes. It's I don't know how to have this conversation with my boss, the executive above them. And so these are actually just normal human things that executives also face. And just like humans, executives do the avoidance thing. They avoid those hard conversations because those hard conversations are hard. There's potential conflict. There's potential consequences. There might be conflicts of interest. There might be so many things involved here, right? So one of the things that I like to talk about with coaches is that how do you have difficult conversations as a coach? Which means you need to model, in executive coaching, you also do this. You need to model how to have conversations with respect and with challenge. You're going to be coaching this executive with respect, but also you're challenging them to think of the thing that they that they could maybe do differently. Where are they maybe going wrong? What's the perspective they're missing? Where do they need a little bit of challenging? Because a lot of times with executives, nobody's challenging them. They're not getting that perspective or feedback that they need, And so let's talk about Well, I'll just say that's kind of the baseline of advanced coaching skills. Are you able to model that respectful listening and challenging them to be better, right? Can you model that? And that's like, if you're an advanced coach, this is your baseline. Can you do those conversations that way? And just generally in conversations in across your life, are you able to challenge respectfully, but still push where it makes sense? And with executives, that's what they really need from a coach. They need someone who's going to push them and challenge them and like ask them those hard questions. So let's talk about how to think about organizations and leadership. This is a little bit of how I think about organizations and leadership. And executive coaching is really just leadership coaching with the fancy executive label, which like that's like a whole bunch of context about what executives face as humans. And they face some specific challenges that I think other kind of coaching doesn't face. And so, like, one of the big things with executives is there's an organizational network around them. And so, like, I like to think of the organizational network as having sort of three separate areas for executives, right? One is your team, the people below you who are maybe directly reporting to you, and maybe there's people below you who are not directly reporting to you, like outside of your particular organization. Maybe you have influence over them. So that's one whole area to think about for executives. And if you're an executive and you're not thinking about people outside your team, there's probably opportunities there. And one is the peers you have, the executives across your network at your level, right? The people who are your peers, your colleagues, the people who maybe have the similar leaders, people on your team, your own team, not the team that you lead. That is like this is actually an underutilized part of executives' network. I think most executives could do better to like leverage their peers better, to build a better relationship with their peers, to have them be more collaborators, not so much competitors, right? Maybe cheerleaders even, to share credit with those people, and vice versa. The best coworkers and colleagues are going to be the ones who you can collaborate with and create more value, right? And then the third area is like the leadership above you, which is like your direct leader, but also anybody above that within your direct, quote, chain of command. Or there's also other leaders outside of that direct sphere. Like there's probably leaders in other areas of the organization that you connect with, that you talk to, that are influencing you, that you also need to influence, right? This may be including people in the organization who might become mentors for you to navigate the organization, or connections that may help you find opportunities in the company. This is an area, outside of your leadership. It's great to build those connections out there. And so how do you navigate that? And there might be, work related and non-work related ways to do that. For example, just relationships that you want to build that are not related to the work you're doing today. But if you have work that touches those executives in other areas of the company, that's a great way to build connections and relationships. And this, I want to share, in addition to the three areas, below you, beside you, and above you, so to speak. There's also this bonus area I'll talk about, like external connections outside the company in the industry that you're in. Like this might be like leaders in the industry, or people who are highly influential, or even like networking events that you can go to. You can build connections outside the industry, outside your company, in the industry you're in. So that can be actually a surprisingly powerful place for executives to build influence, reputation, build up their career, and actually find ideas they can bring to their own work at the company, right? And so for smaller companies, well, you probably need to think of everyone in your company as part of your network. And network, I we use the word networking, but I like to use the word relationshiping. Like networks are just the relationships around you that are important to helping you succeed, both professionally, within your organization, beyond your organization, as well as personally. Like there's a lot of personal growth that comes from executive growth, with a coach. And if I reflect back on my big insight as a leader in an organization, I was in a role at General Motors where I had a important leadership title, but I did not have authority over everybody I had to work with. I had to build authority through not having my reporting relationship directly to subordinates. Like these are people outside my organization who I had to influence. I had to get people to follow process. I had to get people to help with things that they weren't technically supposed to help in their chain of command. How do you build that kind of broad influence? I was really lucky to have faced this big problem early on in my career, because I struggled with it for years. I struggled with it for years. And how do I get people to do the things I need them to do, and they won't listen to me? I cracked the nut open with this one when one of the other executives at the plant took me under his wing. He slammed the door in a private meeting with me and said, like come in my office, and sat me down and told me, "You're failing, Daniel." And the reason I was failing, as he explained to me, is like I had my heart in the right place, but I did not know how to work with my team, how to work with the other parts of the organization. I didn't know how to do the people part of the job that like I had really not learned about leadership. And so leadership was a really, really powerful part of my journey early on because of this mentor. And I learned how to work with my team. I learned how to work with peers in the organization. I learned how to work with organizations, parts of the organization that were not under my direct leadership officially. I learned how to influence those people. I learned how to work with my leadership and how to like manage up, so to speak, and how to lead them and how to help them achieve their goals, but also how to help me navigate that tension between, the people above you and the people below you in your leadership chain, right? That can be a really strong tension because like they want more out of your team, but your team also needs you to help make sure they're more productive, which means protecting them from the problematic priorities that are coming down from leadership. So there's this really really big tension there. And so I want to talk about like this the difference in executive coaching with the sales journey too, because it's a little bit different. In CMC we talk a lot about the sales process and leading people through the sales process as you connect with them and you build this relationship, and eventually they may buy your coaching, right? Um, but in the executive coaching, there's a few different paths. So I want to just mention a few. There's multiple distinct paths here. They don't all look the same, right? What I've seen is that it's ideal if you have some level of corporate experience or fluency in that corporate environment. It really, really, I think, is helpful. So it's kind of an uphill battle if you don't have any of that experience, and you may get that experience from coaching other leaders. You can get some of that you know, uh, from that work, but it's hard to break into that if you don't have some corporate experience. But if you do, it's a lot easier because then you can talk about the things that you experienced in corporate as part of your story. Like just like I just did. In this podcast, I talked about like my experience as a leader in corporate. And I was in corporate for years and years and years. Um, and so that's where I got my leadership experience. So one of the reasons is that I'm a coach is that I went through that corporate experience. I learned about what my mentor did to me. He coached me. I was like, what is that thing that he's doing to me that's actually making a difference? The first person who actually showed that he cared about me in this company and actually makes me want to do better, makes me want to do more, makes me want to achieve better. That's called coaching and mentoring and teaching. He taught me so much. And so, like, that's actually one of the reasons that I'm a coach today. And so if you have that experience, you can speak to it. But let's talk about how you get people to hire you as an executive coach. The first way is like pretty standard, just like sales process. You have a direct relationship and to an executive, and they directly hire you. So like one person there decides for themselves. Like they might have a budget, they might not, they might pay for it personally, whatever the case is. I've had people across the board there where either the company pays or they pay themselves because they actually care about doing better. Usually it starts with working together on work related topics, but it really quickly expands because whatever's happening to them at work in their relationships is almost always happening in other places in their life, like at home or in their social life or other areas. There's a huge linkage between what's happening at work and what's happening at home. And as a coach, you can recognize the linkages between different areas of life that are seemingly totally separate. Because like how you show up in one place is often how you show up in another place, and there's usually very common patterns there. So I usually highlight the dynamic of like this linkage in the sales process before the coaching starts to set expectations with examples of past clients who like they were showing up this way at work in a similar situation that the client is facing, but they realized that they were doing this thing at home with their family that was exactly the same thing. Maybe it's avoiding that conflict, maybe whatever it is, right? So that's the first way. You just have a person that you'll be able to direct connection with. They buy your coaching directly. That happens. The other one is like what I call the second one is like leader first contagion. And leader first contagion is where you coach a leader in an organization for a little period of time, help them, make that choice to to get coaching for their direct reports, right? And maybe you allocate a budget for them with maybe they allocate a budget with you for that coaching process because they see the value and they can recognize that their team would seriously benefit from that. So they want people in their organization to get that coaching that they saw and they saw the value, right? And the best frame here is, how you frame it does matter, but it's it's hard to, you can't really control what people in the organization are saying about what they see. And so like the best frame is actually the word of mouth from people who are seeing the visible change. Like, hey, we noticed you changing. Like, you noticed you've been doing a lot better with all these things. You're succeeding at a whole new level. Like, what are you doing? Maybe they'll talk about coaching, or maybe their team will start doing that coaching with you, and then other people are going to notice that their team is doing better, right? And so that word of mouth and that kind of viral contagion takes time. This takes a lot longer than you might think, But there's things you can do as a coach to improve it. You can also talk with them about their team and how they're working with them. And maybe there's opportunities there that maybe that team member might benefit from coaching. That can be a bonus that you offer, or it can be an extra offer that you make to them, right? Depending on your relationship with them. Um, and so like I would also say there's the direct relationship, there's the leadership contagion for coaching. There's also like a company could hire you um, as an organization, they're hiring you to coach in their organization. These like corporate contracts will take a longer time. There's a longer sales cycle in corporate because they have formal cycles to go through, and there could be a lot of stakeholders to authorize that kind of expense, right? So sometimes you have to build trust at multiple levels, and you know it's taken some time. But I think executive coaching today is much more accepted. It's more widely understood as being beneficial to leaders. And companies sometimes do have budgets for it, actually, nowadays. They didn't used to. It was sort of the secret that nobody knew about coaching. But now today, like coaching is pretty commonly well known, especially in leadership in organizations that are large. But it doesn't mean they have budgets, but they're more likely to today. So I think it's less selling in these longer term sales cycle, but it's more building a relationship with that company over time to help them experience some value. And you might have to do some, sort of free consulting or coaching at first. And if you're not used to long sales cycles, like this usually feels pretty hard, I would say, because they typically don't move so fast. And I would typically rather do these with actually a business partner or collaborator rather than just by myself because it's a long slog, and it helps to have those partners that can not only help you navigate the organization, but also maybe help you deliver the coaching. So if the organization hires you to coach 15 people, you might need multiple coaches here. You might not be able to do that all yourself, not only because you have other clients, but because that's a huge amount of work, and having that split up between multiple coaches can really make a difference. So that's one way to think about the organizational hire. And the fourth way I would say is as a contractor to a coaching company. So like I have plenty of experience with that too, where is you get hired as a contractor through a company that is coaching another company, their client. So like CMC has been one of those companies where we've hired some of our coaches as contractors to deliver that coaching to organizational clients. And it's way harder than I expected as the coaching company to do that because there's a lot of complexity involved. And training and monitoring and invoicing, and there's lots of business pieces of this. There's also quality control, and there's also like renewals and sales. There's a huge part of this that is really complex. So the coaching company is doing a lot of value when they hire you as a coach, and you're giving some value too. But both sides have to be creating value for this to work. And you as the coach, your job is to implement their coaching program, right? You get hired by the company who navigates all the complexity of marketing and client building and getting that sale. Now it's your job to deliver on that as a contractor. So you need to have a strong connection to that people in that coaching company. And you also need to demonstrate that you can operate within both that coaching company and the client company. So there's like a dual role that you play. Your job is to coach the client's executives, but your other job is to serve the needs of the coaching company too. And you have to bring your own same style as a coach. You need to follow the process that you're given. It might be different than what you're used to. So you gotta like put on their hat while you do this. So but also you have to bring your own style because coaching is very much personalized too for the coach given it. Um, but you need to manage both of those, the company's executive clients and uplifting the coaching company too, right? In whatever you do. And that alignment doesn't come that it sounds simple, but it doesn't come that naturally, and sometimes it takes time to figure out. So there's just all these extra complexities of the different ways to sell your executive coaching services, right? And then you can think about like what do you look for in an executive? Personally, like basically the same thing that makes somebody coachable. Like I look for people who are very open to trying new things and experimenting, knowing that they don't have all the answers possibly. That they've understood that it's the problem is often their own behaviors, but the solution often comes from their own behaviors too. Those go together, right? If your behaviors are causing problems, you're open to that, then changing your behaviors can lead to the solutions to those problems, right? And so like most of the people that I want to work with, like they actually are actively interested in wanting to reach their next level in their both in their personal performance, but also maybe ambitiously in the organization. If you want to go from director to vice president, there's some things that you got to work on. Like you got to demonstrate that value. You have to work with your leadership to make sure that that is something that they understand that you want. And there's ways you can have those conversations. So planning through that ascension process within an organization is actually something that's hard for most people to do. And having that extra extra lens to help you plan through it can be very beneficial for an executive. So most of the people that I would want to work with would like one really big one is like I want them to make sure that they care genuinely about their team, right? If I can see how they care about their team, I can usually tell how they speak about their team. If they're like, "Oh, this team is the worst. I hate these people," that's probably not a good sign for me wanting to work with them. There's a place for that. Like there's probably coaches who need to work with that person. And maybe sometimes there's people on the team who need to be let go, but other times there's people on the team who need to be encouraged. And like diving into that complexity, that I love doing that. But the way they speak about their team, if they dehumanize their team, it's not somebody that I really want to work with. Somebody who believes in their team's potential, and maybe not everybody has that potential, depending what stage of the game you get hired by this executive. Sometimes there's a couple people on the team that really do need to let go, and you have to be able to navigate that with them to say like, are these the wrong people for the bus, right? And that is something that is really important to be able to do that in a ethical and real way, right? Like these are real people we're talking about, but making hiring and firing decisions is actually a really big part of being a leader. Being able to recruit the right people and to get the wrong people to leave, that actually can be a really powerful part of what you do for your team and your organization. So these are like, it's not always like let everybody stay, like because that's very avoidant often, and it's because executives often have a really hard time doing performance reviews where there's potential conflict, right? And so like that's really important, like helping them navigate that. And so um, that is like really something to look for. How do they talk and think about their team? What do they feel their responsibilities to their team? Is their job to help encourage and inspire that team? And if I talk about inspiring and encouraging their team and getting the right and wrong people off on and off the bus, how do they respond to that conversation? And I look for that. And sometimes they face, a number of urgent problems, like one or more urgent problems. It's always good that they have that because that's someone's going to be motivated to actually invest in the coaching. And are they ready to invest in the coaching? I want somebody who wants to be challenged for me to push back on their thinking. If they are resisting every attempt I have to challenge them, it might be a challenge with their mindset. So I'm watching for that in the interview. I call it the interview, the discovery session, or that relationship building process. I'm always interviewing them to see, is this somebody that I want to coach and we'll work really well together. And that's the energy is a really big thing. Are you really feeling alive with this person, engaging in the conversation? This is true about not just executives. It's true about everybody. Is it leading to real insight and decisions that they're making? Can you get them to make some decisions? And you see the gleam in their eye when they figure something out. I remember I had a leader outside of my organization. He was adjacent to it, but he was in the same kind of division outside of my team within the same company. And he was, he had a session on the calendar with me. It's like you get to meet like leaders across the companies every now and then in the corporation. And so I sat down with him for an in-person meeting, and one of the things he asked me is like, "What's your job?" And I was like, "Well, my job is this and this." And I started listing off the pieces of responsibility of managing the operations and all the stuff. And like he told me something that like really blew my mind. He said, "Your job as a leader is to transform the organization." And then like it finally brought clarity to everything I was supposed to be doing. Like that's my job. And he saw it and he says, like, I can see it in your eye. Is that's lighting you up? I'm like, yeah, that totally lit me up because that's what something that I could get behind. It's something I could see. I could see the people thriving. I could see all these changes that could be made as a feeling and energy for the whole organization. And so I really loved that he did that to me, but because he said he saw it in my face. And am I seeing that in the face of the executives who like are they inspired by a really positive mission like that? If I tell them their job is to transform their team and their organization, like is that something energizing to them? And that's I look for that. So do I see the gleam in their eye for the things that matter? So that's kind of how I think about what I look for in executives. But my coaching philosophy, just to wrap this up, my coaching philosophy has totally evolved over time. And I wasn't always doing executives, and I don't always do executives now. Sometimes I work with business leaders, sometimes I work with others. It just varies. But I do have a significant chunk of my business with executives too. And that could be, CEOs or business owners. They're executives too. If a business owner doesn't think of themselves as an executive or a leader, that's a really big opportunity for them to change the way they're framing their role. So just like my coaching has evolved, my philosophy has evolved, yours will too. And that's a good thing. I think I've settled on the concept of leadership as the core of my coaching. I come to see leadership as that core challenge for like literally every human. Not everybody agrees with me. Like this is my lens on humanity, right? It's not just about executives. It's about leadership for humans. And how do you lead yourself? How do you lead others. For executives, how do you lead your peers in the organization? But for everybody, like how do you lead your colleagues, your family, your clients, your friends, anyone you meet? Are you leading these conversations forward to a good place to add value? Are you building connection? That's a leadership activity to build connection. It takes intention. That higher level of leadership that you take, that the way that you approach people and conversations, the better you do that, the more impact you have on the people around you and on the world around you. Like leadership is like the one thing that's ever changed the world, right? And that happens over and over again, for better or for worse, right? Great leadership tries to make the world better, whether at a small scale or a large one, depending on your circle of influence. And our job as leaders is to grow that circle of influence so we can have greater and greater impact. So if you're a coach, yes, your philosophy and path will evolve, but we're here to support that journey for you as a coach. That's what CMC does, right? Every day, CMC is working to help coaches figure out and evolve their philosophy and their own leadership of their own self in the coaching business and therefore of their clients. So that's part of what we do. And if anything resonated with you today, please leave a comment or reply. Reach out to us. Go to cmc.coach and join our free Facebook community where you can get a lot of free and helpful value or in your coaching business. That's our mission, to really help coaches navigate those challenging emotional and business landscapes as a coach. It sounds easy, like I'm just gonna show up and talk and get paid. That's not how it actually works in practice. You have to be a leader of yourself and the people around you. Otherwise, you will not be able to scale your coaching business or even succeed, really. So, with that, thanks for listening to this episode of the Coach's Journey. Hope you have gotten some value. Please, again, reply where it is with a comment or a question. And then, if you know any coaches who could benefit from this conversation, maybe they're interested in executive coaching, or maybe they're just interested in becoming a better coach and getting more clients in their business, and they're willing to take that extra leadership, please forward them this podcast. We go live every week with a different topic for coaches on the journey. So thank you for listening.